right, well, welcome back. As I was just telling Justin, at the end of June, I decided to take 7 weeks off, and here we are, December 1st, so it's about 20-something weeks, but it was well needed for me, especially for what I'm about to start teaching. So a couple announcements that we want to take care of for Corey Coffee and Conspiracy. One, if you've emailed me or anybody in this room, but mainly those online, if you've emailed me about a t-shirt and you didn't get it, re-email me. We just got a new supply in, and we will mail that out to you free of charge. We just want to get the goods out there and get it to people, but that's preachercorey@aol.com, and you can send that on. Now, what I'm about to teach tonight is going to be a little far out, and that's fine. That's the whole purpose of this class. One of the things that has happened in the 20 weeks I was off, I got a lot of emails. Hey, when you getting back? When are you starting again? And one of the things that people ask me is, where do I go to study these things that you're studying? And I never answer that question, never will. And the reason being is I have no idea where everybody's at. And one of the subjects that we're going to be talking tonight with the bloodlines, if you don't have a grasp on who you are and who you are in Christ and who the Bible says that Jesus Christ is, you're going to end up jacked. And so a lot of this stuff that I'm teaching, I'm obviously teaching to you in this class, and people online, they can, fend for themselves. But the reason I don't mind teaching it here is I know the church you go to, and I know what we teach and preach in here, and plus we're readily available to answer questions when you get confused. But if you're not careful on some of this fringe conspiracy stuff, man, you got to filter everything through the book. And the reason being is, if not, it won't be long that you're going, well, wait a minute, I thought. And the next thing you know, you're like what the book of Ephesians says, blown about with every wind of doctrine. And that is not good. And just what Justin just taught, if you go through those 7 things and add those things to your faith, believe me, you can go through any study you want and you won't get rattled. So we are obviously back at this verse, and I always start at this verse, and the reason being is because I'm tired of hearing people go, all that conspiracy theory stuff. None of that's true. We've debunked all that. Really? So the God of this world, according to 2 Corinthians 4:4, is Satan, right? We would all agree on that. Now, so if we, as Bible-believing Christians, believe that Satan is running the show, now, obviously, we would all agree that God has the final say-so, that Satan can't do one thing that God doesn't allow. We can see that in the book of Job. But we do know that he is the prince and the power of this air. He is the God of this world. And then all of a sudden we're shocked that the media, the world governments, all the other secret societies, all the colleges are all working together to go against God. And then we go, well, there's no conspiracy. Really? There's not? You can't see one? Like, okay. And so we said he's the God of this world. The other thing I always start with is Proverbs 18:13. He that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it's a folly and a shame on him. So what happens is the average person goes through a study and go, I don't buy into any of that. Well, hold up, genius. Before you dive in and give me your answer on this, how about you take some time to go through it? And guys, I can assure you, when you say I've debunked all those conspiracy theories, really? Because it takes years just to go through one, and then all of a sudden you've debunked 7 or 8 of them in a week because you watched a YouTube video or what have you. So bottom line is, listen to the whole thing before you have to answer it. This has been our outline for going on 3 or 4 years now. And each time we pull something off of our outline to study, what we find out is that it like a spider web, it's all networked together. And the reason why that shouldn't be shocking is if all these things are working against the plan of God on this planet, and he's the one running the show, then you shouldn't be shocked that they're all linked somehow, some way. And we're going to show a little bit about that tonight. We're going to be talking about the bloodline families here over the next however many weeks. But man, when you start talking about bloodline families, you start getting into Greek mythology. You start getting into Skull and Bones and Illuminati, and you get into the Rosicrucians, which is really big in this, the Jesuits, the Bilderbergs, the Freemasonry, the Knights of Malta, the Ninth Circle, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations. Man, all this stuff is tied in to these bloodline families. And so each time we bring something out, you go, yeah, I thought you taught them about that. Yeah, because it's all connected. Now, what we're going to be talking about specifically at first, we're going to be talking about bloodline families, but specifically we're going to be talking about the Holy Grail. Now, I was going to have a walk-up song with Justin Timberlake and Jay-Z playing Holy Grail, and I could have led into this. Maybe that'll be my YouTube startup song for this one, but some of you are going, what? But either way, we're going to talk about this Holy Grail and what it is. But now, before we get into that and we start looking at royal bloodlines and how that's working. So when I look at you and I say they're an elite group of people, families that run this whole planet, it's easy for you to go, oh, come on, there's 7.5 billion of us on this planet. How can just an elite few groups of people run the whole show? Well, they do. And here's how it basically works in a pyramid scheme. The eye of the pyramid is Lucifer. Now, I'm careful to say Lucifer and not Satan. To you and I, same guy. Not to them. Okay? Lucifer is the light bearer. And in their opinion, is the good guy, and the God of your Bible is the bad guy. Let's start by that's how they think. Right? So he is the eye of the pyramid. He's the one running the show and calling the shots. Under him are what we would call the world monarchs. These are the families that are running it. Now we're going to talk about 13 specific, but if you only think in the realm of 13 families, you're going to end up messed up. Because one of those is the Rockefellers, and you can't take that Rockefeller family all the way back. So you go, well, wait a minute, how have they been running the show? And we'll get into that a little bit more. But underneath the world monarchs is the Council of 13, right? And under that is technically a Council of 33. But these families all have a powerful person at the top of that, and there's a Council of 13. Under that's the Council of 33. Under that is the Committee of 300. This is made up of the richest people on the planet. And guys, when you hear things like Jeff Bezos is the most richest person on the planet, that's all media hogwash. The Rothschild family could buy and sell Jeff Bezos over hundreds and hundreds of times. All that you're getting to see, when you see it on television, that's just a front. It's to just give you a sense of being, per se. But the people who are really running the planet, you don't know who they are. They're nicknamed the invisible ones because they're pulling the strings like, what is Pinocchio's guy? Geppetto. Right? They're Geppetto. They're pulling the strings, and all you're getting to see is Pinocchio. Right? Now, underneath the Committee of 300 is what's called the think tanks or the round tables. And it's important that you understand, I just said round tables because we're going to bring up Camelot tonight. And in that think tank area, you have the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, you have the United Nations, you have the Bilderbergs, you have the Club of Rome, and so forth. These are all the guys, most of this is in Europe and America, running the think tanks. And so what they do, and you say, well, how in the world can a select few people control 7 billion people on this planet? And by the way, for those of you who are going, this is stupid, I'm in a church, why are we talking about this? Because the world is pushing towards one man running 7 billion people on this planet. Now think about that a little bit. There is going to be an Antichrist that comes on the scene, and he's running the show for everybody. So to comprehend or to think that a select group of people is doing it now isn't that far-fetched. Now here's how they do it. They do it under a certain structure. And they start with the world financial control. So under the think tanks are your world banks, your central banks. This is your tax revenue, your interest revenues. This is where they keep you and I in debt. Think about what our life is. Hey, we want to send you to a Rockefeller school system so that you can graduate. When you graduate, we want to send you off to college because if you don't go to college, you won't be successful. However, when you get out of college, you're going to owe hundreds of thousands of dollars in back pay towards college tuition. So what you're going to have to do is go take that college tuition or degree, go perform a job and work and work and work to pay off that. Plus you're going to buy a house, you're going to buy a car, you're going to, oh, by the way, have kids, and then you got to send them to school. And then they're going to go. And eventually about 65 when you're retired and you're worthless at that point because you have no energy, your health is shot, and you're like, great, I'm about dead and I've got a chance to finally relax. All right? You think that system's by mistake? It's not. It's designed that way, okay? And it's how you control the world. Justin just asked the question, should we all quit our jobs? Okay? You know why? There are certain days I hate the awning business. I can't stand it. You know why I don't quit? Because there's a stack of bills. And I go, yeah, I'm quitting. No, you're not. Those bills got to be paid. So how they do it from there is going from the financial world down into the world resource control. These are your corporations. Notice the Shell gasoline, which was owned by the Schiff family that we will talk about. We had Standard Oil owned by the Rockefeller family. We got on this side, we got Pfizer. Do you think they're important at the moment? You think they're controlling some things? Have you looked at the price of Madura stock before the pandemic and after the pandemic? If you were smart, you would have invested $13 and been paid $345 after that. All right? Now, the corporations are running the show after the world banks. Then they come down and world population control. How do we do it? How are we going to control the people? Well, we're going to do it through government, through the media, and through religion. Think about how powerful those three are. Look at what's going on in today's world with the pressure for you to get jabbed. Where does it come from? The media, the government, and religions. And isn't it interesting how much control that has on people? Fear and placed on them. And so once you get that control, you got all these people down here. And this setup is set up by elite families at the top. Now, what makes that interesting is not my opinion, and definitely not mainstream Christianity's opinion, but to them at the top, they trace back their lineage to Genesis 6. When the fallen angels came to this planet and created the Nephilim, and that bloodline of the Nephilim bloodline, they would all claim it. And so they would say, we are not like you. We're different than you are. We are the children of deity. Now, this is how they think. Now, you and I would all look at that and go, no, you're not. You're going to die like the rest of men. And if you die without Christ, you will enter into an awful place called hell for eternity. Outside of Jesus Christ, you have no hope. Now, bottom line is, that's how they're running the whole system. Now, these are the 13 families that we will eventually get into. You have the Astors, the Bundys, the Collins, the DuPonts, the Freemans, the Kennedys, the Lee family, which is out of China and Japan, the Far East, the Onassis bloodline, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Russells, and the Van Dunn, and then the Merovingian, which we will talk about a little bit tonight. But you're going to learn about people like the Pacers that is in this group, and they're being hidden. And we're going to talk about those families. Some of these families, and you go, wait a minute, the Kennedy family? That's not that old of a family. Right, because what they do is they keep switching around and putting different names up front to keep you and I off base so that we don't know what's going on. Now, so in order to really understand this mindset of how they think, you have to understand Gnosticism, okay? If you don't understand Gnosticism, then you don't understand how they think, which means you'll never understand how it's working. They are Gnostics. Okay, what is a Gnostic? Okay, let's go through this. There we go. The word Gnosticism comes from the Greek word, and it literally means, translated, possessing knowledge. Gnosticism is not a religion on of itself. It is just the name of a large number of religious philosophies and beliefs. It appears between the 1st and 2nd century AD. Even after its first appearance, it started to spread all over the Mediterranean region in Europe. Now, bottom line is Gnosticism is a Greek word meaning knowledge, right? We still use it today. You take your car into the mechanic, he's going to do a diagnostic check on it. You go to a doctor and say, "Doctor, what's the prognosis?" What he's saying is, what is your knowledge based on that health situation? You go to the mechanic and ask him for a diagnostic, what is he going to do? He's going to tell you what's wrong with your car because he knows based on these things what's wrong. So we use the word Gnostic or Gnosticism in our daily life without even realizing it. And they believe that their philosophy of thinking is the more than you know, the better off you are. Okay? Which, okay, I see some understanding there. I don't want to be a village idiot, but, at the same time, I don't think I'm advancing with God just because I know more. Which is interesting because what Justin just got done teaching is we have that mentality in our churches. We think we're closer to God because we know more of the Bible. I've known men who knew the Bible front to back and were evil. And then I've met people who didn't know a whole lot of Bible, but boy, they walked with God. Now, I'm all for learning the Bible. But at the same time, just because you know the Bible doesn't necessarily mean you know the God of the Bible. Okay? Now, so here we go. The Gnostic God. In Gnosticism and modern Gnosticism, there is one ultimate God. He created the whole universe, not from nothing, but from himself. Therefore, everything around us and ourselves are a part of God. Now, you might think that Gnosticism should be a monotheistic then, but it is not. Because Gnosticism has some intermediary deities called aeons. And the reason I highlighted this, and by the way, I'm getting this off their website, but the reason why I'm highlighting is I want you to pay attention. They are between God and humankind, helping God by doing certain tasks. And these deities or these aeons would be guys that, okay, we got God the Creator. Now, to you and I, that would be Jehovah God, or i.e. Jesus Christ. Because if you don't think Jesus and Jehovah are the same person, we need to do a whole new class. Okay? Same guy, same person. God that we know of the Bible created everything. They don't believe that. What they believe is there is a divine architect who designed it all, and that the God of the Bible that you and I love dearly is an evil God. He's one of those lower level gods, and Satan, as Lucifer, was trying to help the world out, and the God of the Bible was working against him. I'm going to prove all this in just a second. But notice, he says, we got some intermediary deities called aeons. They are between God and humankind, helping God by doing certain tasks. All right, here is the Gnostic salvation. Every people on earth should pay more attention to their spiritual health. They should all seek salvation or gnosis, knowledge. Only through salvation will one be able to become one with God. And I'm emphasizing, I'm about to open the Bible. There are two important things about gnosis that you should know. Firstly, gnosis is within every human being, but it doesn't mean that everyone will find salvation. So secondly, you have to work on your salvation and stimulate it. Only through spiritual wisdom will one be able to understand the clear path towards salvation. And God sent us numerous messengers of light who teach us how to seek salvation. Now, if you know your Bible, you're kind of tracking with me. Because that whole messenger of light thing, do you know what Lucifer's name means? Light bearer. Okay? To this world, they are Luciferians. They worship Lucifer, who is the light giver or the light bearer. That's why even they are into Jesus. And here's why. What did Jesus say he was? I'm the light of the world, right? So in their opinion, he is not deity. He's one of those aeons who came to give us light and wisdom. That's why the word Sophia, you got to pay attention to that when you're studying this. It's even where we get our word philosophy, Sophia, and it's all about wisdom, right? Now, if you look at 2 Corinthians 11:13, it says, "For such are false prophets, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel." You know what the word angel means? Messenger. Messenger of light. Angel of light. Therefore, it is no great thing that his ministers be transformed as ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. So when you look at the world and you say to them, to the Gnostics, hey, what do you think about Jesus? They're all for Jesus. Now, if you could go to the first 3 verses of this chapter, actually it's verse 4, I believe it is, Paul's looking at Eve and says, man, I'm worried. Or he's looking at the church saying, I'm worried that you're going to get deceived or beguiled by Satan the same way Eve did. And we're going to go to Eve in just a second. But he says, listen, there's going to be people who come and preach another gospel, another spirit, and another, what's the word? Another Jesus, another gospel, another spirit. That's right. So another Jesus, another gospel, another spirit. So the question isn't, hey, do they believe in Jesus? The question is, which Jesus are they believing in? Because, and by the way, you don't even have to go into Gnosticism. We get asked that within Christianity. And by the way, the reason it was talking about the 1st and 2nd century earlier is because when you go back to your boys like Origen and Irenaeus and I can never get that guy's name out. Terullin, Tertullian. I think that's how you say it. That's it. All right. So these guys were all into Gnosticism, and they classified themselves as Gnostic Christians. Now, think about what I just read, what Gnosticism is, and about working on your salvation, about how do I get salvation? I learn more. That's why you got people struggling. People that are just going crazy to try to get more information and more information so they can get closer to God, which goes back to what Justin was teaching. If you can't do what you've already learned, why are you moving on to learn more? Why not just do what you already know to do and start there? Okay, now, Genesis 3, 2 and 5. Now, let's think about what the first lie was in the Bible. So God comes along and he says, I made a garden for you guys. Adam and Eve was like, great, cool. You can eat any tree you want. You got all these trees that are good for you. That one there is the tree of life, and that one's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That one I don't want you to touch. Don't eat of that tree. All right? Satan comes along and says, why don't you eat of that tree? Well, God said not to. He said, don't even look at it, which he didn't say that, but she added to the Word of God, but that's a whole nother series. So comes along and says, Oh, no. You know why God doesn't want you to eat that? Because when you eat it, you're going to be like the who? The gods, right? Knowing good and evil. So the whole thing was, when they ate, their eyes were open. Right? Now, what was the goal when eating it? To get knowledge. It's the same lie today. Nothing's changed. That's why Paul comes around and says, we're not ignorant to Satan's, devices. We know how he rolls. He hasn't changed the playbook yet, because he works the same way. Hey, what's his promise? I'm going to give you some knowledge. Well, when you get the knowledge, what are you going to be like? The gods. Now remember, the Gnostics believe there's the great architect, and then there's these lower level gods. And so therefore, when you get this knowledge, you elevate into their status, which is Gnosticism at its core. Every single royal family running around believes in Gnosticism, elevating up to godlike status. Now, what they would teach you is this story right here is the God of the Bible is an evil God. He's trying to keep knowledge from us. And Lucifer came along and tried to help us out. That's why when you go, why could anybody worship Lucifer? Because you're viewing this whole thing from this angle, and they're standing on the other side looking at a whole different scene because of the way they think and believe. Now, Genesis comes along and says it's the tree of what? Knowledge of good and evil. Right? Now, what goes down in your esoteric secret societies today is they believe in what's called the 7 sacred sciences, which is interesting. It's now been changed to the 7 liberal arts. So you go to a liberal arts college, here they are. Right? Now, what are they? Music, grammar, astronomy, logic, geometry, which is a big one, math, rhetoric, and philosophy. Now, ancient alchemy is tied into all this. So their belief system was that Lucifer set Adam down and taught him these 7 sacred sciences. And what we have in this system is what's known as an adept. So an adept is somebody who has mastered this stuff and mastered alchemy. And so what happens is God, their God, teaches Adam, here are the 7 sacred sciences. He turns around, teaches it to Abel and Cain. What happens to Abel? He's gone, right? Now, so we get Seth, he teaches it to them. So what they've been doing is they believe they are the guardians of these 7 sacred sciences. And so they pass this down from generation to generation. And so what happens is when you're in the esoteric or hidden societies, what is it based on? Knowledge. It's about understanding and getting all these different belief systems being passed down. So then it enters into Genesis 6. What happens in Genesis 6? Well, we know from books like the book of Enoch that the watchers, 200 watcher angels, come down to Mount Hermon. They procreate with women, and they have this offspring called the Nephilim. But that's not all that happened. What they did was guys like Azazel taught men, humans, the art of war. They taught them high heels, makeup, all that stuff. Now what's interesting is you go, I don't know about all that. Well, then you get over here to Paul, and Paul starts talking to women about how they look because of the angels. And you go, what? What is he talking about? He's taking you back to Genesis 6 and he's telling women, careful. Because that thing was passed down from these watcher angels. And so all this hidden knowledge is being passed down. And so what happens is once you learn all this stuff, you become illuminated or part of the Illuminati. Now, understand the word Illuminati, first of all, has been distorted in the last few years because you got morons like Jay-Z and all those other idiots running around doing their, hand motions and stuff, and people singing about the Illuminati. But it was really cranked up May 5th, I believe it is, not Cinco de Mayo, but May 5th, 1776, or May 1st, it may be. And it was started by Adam Weishaupt, right? Or Weishaupt, if you pronounce it right. And that was a society that came out of, and we'll talk about later, the replacement of the Templars and so forth. But the reason we hear the word Illuminati a lot is because it literally means you've been enlightened. You now understand some things. Now, we got your boy Manly P. Hall here. If you ever want to learn about Freemasonry, or if you have family members that are part of the 3rd degree Blue Lodge, which my grandfather, if he ever heard me teach like this, he would lose it. All right? He was a Mason big time, wore the apron, had the ring, all that deal. My grandmother was an Eastern Star. So save all your family stuff for me. I know, I got family in it myself. Right? I would tell you, the 3rd degree Masons, Blue Lodge, what you see, the guys standing out on the side of the road doing all their deal, they're not illuminated. It's when you elevate up to the 32nd and 33rd degrees of that. And my grandfather wasn't even close, right? And by the way, I don't know how much he was really into it, other than it was just some guys hanging out at a lodge, and he was kind of digging it, drinking beer with them. So, all right. Now, here is Manly P. Hall. If you ever want to understand anything about Freemasonry and not somebody's opinion, this guy is the guy to read after. He was a Freemason. Symbolism is the language of mysteries. By symbols, men have ever sought to communicate to each other those thoughts which transcends the limitations of language. And so how all this knowledge has been brought down throughout centuries hasn't always been through quote-unquote language, but through symbolism, i.e. the all-seeing eye, or, what's the one where the snake's eating itself, the Ouroboros, all right? So when you go down through this, we got all these, the yin and the yang. All these are symbolisms that these family members have passed this information down with. So let's actually get into the Holy Grail and what we're talking about. So when we think about the Holy Grail, I've never seen Monty Python, but I mentioned something Sunday about me teaching this, and this is all I've heard since, all right? Monty Python. Never seen it, okay? However, I've seen Indiana Jones, and you choose poorly, and he dies and whatever. So most Christians think Holy Grail, they equate it to a cup, right? The cup that Jesus used at the Last Supper, which, by the way, you have a Bible in front of you, you can't find any of this, okay? I'm just telling you what they believe. So some equate it to that cup of Luke 22:20, where he drank the wine of the Last Supper. Some have tried to tied the Grail cup offered to Jesus on the cross with the gall wine, but clearly says a sponge, all right? But I'm just giving you what they say. Others have placed the Grail in the hands of Joseph or Arimathea, who, according to legend, collected Jesus' blood in the Grail while Jesus was on the cross, literalizing, "This is my blood shed for you." So in other words, the very cup he used at the Last Supper, Joseph of Arimathea got it. While he gets stabbed in the heart, out comes blood and water, he collects it in this cup. Okay? Now, Joseph of Arimathea made a trek to the British Isles, or the Celtic region, where the Grail was later housed and quested by King Arthur and his knights. That's what we know about it. But if you really understand what the adepts, what the esoteric secret societies, what the Gnostics believe, it's far more than a cup. All right? Now, the word Holy Grail comes from a Latin term meaning graal or greal, and its prefix is san or sang, and if you trace it back and you go through the Latin, it literally means holy blood, not Holy Grail. You just got to trace the Latin. And by the way, I didn't trace it. I'm smart enough to study after. And here's how I describe myself. I'm a researcher. You ever broke that word down? I research what somebody else has already searched. That's what a researcher is. And if you have any brains, you learn to do that. That way you don't reinvent the wheel. But as they go back, you find out it literally means holy blood. So to the Gnostics, it would have more meaning than a cup. It would literally mean holy bloodline, which brings us into the Da Vinci Code. Now here's what's interesting. I don't watch movies. I definitely don't go to the movies. That has nothing to do with, I think it's a sin. I never understood any of that anyway. I just don't want to go. You ever been in one of those nasty places? Your feet stick, and if you wear the kind of shoes I wear, you're not wanting to walk around in that nastiness, right? So, at the end of the day, I don't go to movies. But I remember when the Da Vinci Code came out. And man, you would have thought every pastor in town had lost his brains. They were all going off about it. I'm like, what's the problem, man? I don't even know what it means. Da Vinci Code, okay? So, the Da Vinci Code is basically a fictional story about factual beliefs of the Gnostics. And the whole premise of the movie is the Grail isn't actually a cup, but it's the womb of Mary Magdalene, Jesus' wife. Now, you probably just stopped for a second and thought, what did you just say? Now, what I'm describing to you is what the Gnostics believe. I don't think Jesus was ever married. I believe Jesus died on a cross at 33 years old, and he has a wife coming to him called the church, the bride of Christ. Right? Now, however, what I'm describing is what these people believe. Now, it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. They believe it. And so their mindset and how they think works this way. So if you go, oh, that's a bunch of hogwash. I know. But it doesn't change how they think. Right? Now, so Jesus was supposedly married to Mary Magdalene in Bethany when she anointed him, if you go back to the Bible and read that. They believe that Jesus didn't die on the cross, but was taken down in a coma-type situation. And for proof of that, they even point you to Pilate. When they go to Pilate, remember, he's already dead. And Pilate was shocked that he was already dead. Now, you say, well, why was he shocked? Because Pilate put plenty of men to death. And you say, well, yeah, but he went through a scourge also. He put a lot of people under a scourge. Jesus died of a broken heart, but that's I can take you to Psalms 22 and prove that, but that's a whole nother story. But Jesus supposedly, in Pilate's mind, died a little too early. And so their belief system was he wasn't actually dead, so Joseph of Arimathea gets him off the cross, takes him in a nice cool cave, nurses him back. Him and his wife, Mary Magdalene, is helping Joseph of Arimathea, and they're getting the body, and all of a sudden he's revived. And so Jesus goes and lives a long, free life with his wife, Mary Magdalene, and they have at least 3 kids. That's their belief system. Now, to them, Jesus is a great prophet, a great teacher, a giver of great wisdom, one of those aeons that were here to be a light bearer for us, or a messenger of light, but they don't believe he's deity. Now, for you and I, our whole system hinges off that one event. Nothing matters if there's not a death and a resurrection. We're all wasting time. Because if he didn't die, you're still in your sin. And if he did die and he didn't raise again, you're still in your sin. So, our whole system is built off that one key event. It's so big. But to them, he didn't actually die. And you'd think, well, that's crazy if he didn't die. Remember, he didn't, in their opinion, he didn't come to die for our sins. He came to give us wisdom. Did he do that? Yes. So in their system, he came and did what he was supposed to do. So whether he died on that cross or died 50 years later in some small town with his wife Mary Magdalene, they don't care because it doesn't fit their system. Now, Afterwards, they have this third kid. His name is Josephus, right? And because of some death, Josephus is now going to take Jesus' bloodline and carry it on. Now, I'm leading up to a lot of this, and some of you are looking at me like, holy cow. Okay, I'm going to prove their system thinks they're carrying the royal bloodline of Christ. Not as deity of God in human flesh, but as one of the great prophets. And as a king who Jesus' bloodline goes back to David and Abraham. Well, that's big to these guys because they're all about intermarrying monarchs to bring it more together. All right? So what happens is Joseph of Arimathea takes the child to the Celtic kingdoms of Glastonbury, to be specific, where his bloodline is mixed with the Celtic royal kingdoms. Now, the Celtic dynasty is, for a lack of better terms, basically Great Britain, Wales, Scotland, that area. And so we can go and learn about the Celtics there. Now, you said, where do you learn all this stuff? Where are they getting this Mary and Magdalene and Jesus got married? It's what's called the Gnostic Gospels. Now, if you just looked up Gnostic Gospels, there is a plethora of books you can go and study. Most of them come out of Egypt, which I don't have time to take you down that path, but nothing good comes out of Egypt. Just bank on it. All right? Now, bottom line is, there's a gospel called the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, who they elevate to the level of Peter or Paul. All right? There's the Gospel of Philip. There's the Gospel of Thomas. All of these are going to teach that Mary and Jesus were married. Mary Magdalene, that being. Now, they're not a part of our canon, our 66 books. And the reason they're rejected is they're not Bible. They're not Scripture. Now, if you wanted to read them as a history book, go for it. I don't know how much history you're going to get at. I would tell you it's basically Satan counterfeiting the true gospel of Jesus Christ. Okay, so read whatever you want to, but that's basically what's going down with them. Now, after the son intermingles with the Celtic royal bloodlines, then it is mixed with the Merovingian dynasty, the descendants of giants. Now think about the Celtics for a second. Stonehenge. Where is that? That's in England. Now, once again, if you think that the Stonehenge is something put together by man, you haven't really looked into it. Those are Nephilim-designed systems put around this world. And I could take you to monolithic systems all around the planet that we can't even do to this day. And it was done because we had Nephilims running around this planet who had extra strength and had extra knowledge about things that we didn't. All right? And so, but the Celtic family comes from the Tudhoth Danann, Tuthoth Danann, I think is how you pronounce it, but either way, you're seeing it, which is what's known as the tribe of the gods. So when the Celtics trace their lineage back, they go back to the Nephilim, the giants, or the fairy people. Now, in your mind, what's a fairy? And keep it clean here. All right? A fairy, we think of like the fairy tales, right? We think about the little guy on the shoulder, right? The fairy people, if you trace it back, will be your fallen angels. They were off planet. And they knew it. And a fairy tale originally was about the fallen angels. Now, what Satan's done, because he's slick, he has turned that thing into fairy tale. Oh, that's what we teach our kids. Right? And we tell them all these stupid stories about Jack and the Beanstalk. What was at the top of that beanstalk? All right, just a thought here. All right. Now, Rex Deus, okay? If you've ever heard that term, it's Latin for king, God, So it's called the Rex Deus bloodline, is the European branch of the descendants of both High Priest Aaron and King David of ancient Israel, and elites of dispersed Israelites who have managed to preserve their dual lineage intact for some 2,000 years and have appointed themselves as the custodians of the mysteries of Judaism and Christianity. They further speculate that the Rex Deus bloodline includes Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and the Desponazi, that it may have been the progenitors of the Merovingian dynasty. Now, before I go on, let me grab a drink of water. If you've watched, what was the movie I just mentioned? Da Vinci Code. They mention the priori, why is my mind going blank, of Zion, priory of Zion in there, okay? The priory of Zion, if you want to study this out, maybe I'll add some more to this in the weeks to come. If you go to the internet, they all go, oh, that's been debunked. It started in the 1950s, blah, 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 blah. Not true. If you go back and study it, there's been a group of people who have fallen under that symbolism, because they actually have their own symbol, of the priory of Zion, and their whole job is to guard and protect that bloodline that they're describing. Now, you go on, it says, to avoid persecution, the Rex Deus bloodline adopted the philosophy of blending in with whatever culture and religion they happen to be in the presence of while secretly passing from generation to generation their own true beliefs and rituals. Now, so if you look at this, here's a breakdown of Mary and Joseph with Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and you go over here, and here's Josephus, and it comes down here when he ends up in the Celtic region. And you ever heard of the Fisher's Kings? All right? The Fisher King is the one who supposedly got the Grail cup the first time from Joseph of Arimathea. He was sick for years, couldn't be healed. He gets a hold of this cup, and boom, he's healed. Right? This is where all this folklore comes from it. Now, what happens is they start giving off offspring, and then you bring in the Franks or the Merovingians, and they tie them in together. So now we've got the Celtics and the Merovingian bloodlines, along with Jesus' bloodline, being formed into three major dynasties into one bloodline. That's why when we go start studying 13 of them, and you go, well, how did it get down to 13? It's because they keep bringing it in together, okay? Now, you say, well, I don't believe any of that. Well, neither do I. Once again, this whole study is to teach you how they think. I don't believe Jesus had offspring. The only offspring Jesus has is sitting in this classroom. Right? It's people who come to know Christ through faith. That's it. All right? Now, let's talk about King Saul. This is important. So they tie this Rex Deus bloodline into King Saul through Mary Magdalene, and they say that she was a Benjamite descendant of royal lineage from Saul. Okay? Now, once again, you say, can you prove that? I can't. And you say, well, how can they? I don't know that they can. But whatever system they're using to prove it, they have their lineages. Now, whether they're right or not wrong, who knows? I'm just telling you what they believe. All right, this is where we bring in the title King of Jerusalem that's going to come into play. Now, hang with me here because I'm going to let you see some cool stuff here. Joshua gave Jerusalem as an inheritance to the tribe of Benjamin. Most of us don't know. I'll come back to that. Watch this. Joshua 18:28. He says, and Zelah, Eliph, and Jebusi, which is Jerusalem. So you all agree that Jebusi is Jerusalem. He goes on and he says, this is the inheritance. There's 14 cities and villages. And he says, this is the inheritance of the children of Benjamin. Later on, I think it's in the book of Judges, and it says that the tribe of Benjamin could not remove Anakim, or I forget who was in that city, but it basically says the tribe of Benjamin couldn't get him out of Jerusalem. Now what's funny is if we're just average everyday Baptists, Jerusalem is part of Judah. And we don't even tie in Benjamin to Jerusalem. But they do. Because what happens is Joshua gives that city to the Benjamites. Now, how often have you ever heard that? We always get tied into to Judah with Jerusalem. But clearly in your Bible, this is what's going down. So what goes on here, this is important because this king of Jerusalem thing is going to come into play at the end times, because the Antichrist is not going to sit on a throne in Rome. We always talk about Mystery Babylon. And you say, where is that? Well, it's got 7 hills, 7 mountains around it. We can go in and talk about the scarlet and the purple and prove we're talking about Rome. But yet when he takes his throne at 3.5 years in, he's in Jerusalem. He's the king of Jerusalem. Now check this out. So on Easter Sunday, 1118, a new king of Jerusalem was chosen, Baldwin I, cousin of the late Godfrey de Bouillon. Like his former family member, he too had served on the First Crusade. All right? Barely had Bouillon II gotten used to his newly appointed seat when he received a visit from Depayan, Godfrey de Saint Omar, as though the two intrepid knights were presenting their credentials. Also involved was the St. Clairs, which will be the ones that take in the Knights Templar, which is the order of Freemasonry comes. All right, so we'll talk about the St. Clairs later. But what happens is they come in here on Easter Sunday, 1118, and dub this guy, Bouillon I, King of Jerusalem. And it starts. From there on out, this is after the First Crusade, that title is going to be passed down from generation to generation. And it's going to not only be passed down, but it's going to mix families. And the reason being is because you have this family marries this family, and this one has a male heir, so they give it to that one. And he carries it for a while, and then it gets passed to this family over here. Now check this out. Right now, as I speak, this is the king of Jerusalem. King of Spain. And you think, what? How is that possible? Now remember, I don't think this guy's going to be the Antichrist by no means. I'm telling you that title, King of Jerusalem, is going to tie in. Now check this out. Every single family within the system believes the Antichrist is coming from them. The Pacers especially. And every single one of them know that that Antichrist is going to carry that title, King of Jerusalem. Now, in their opinion of the end times, they believe that they're actually going to win against the evil God of the Bible. Have you ever stopped to wonder what they're doing at Armageddon when the kings of the earth come to fight with God? Now, to me and you, I've always read that and go, that's kind of stupid. The guy who spoke everything into existence, you're fighting him? But if you're under the belief system that he is not the ultimate architect, that he is one of those under gods, and you got your under God over here, then why wouldn't you go to town with him? That's their mindset. They don't think they're going to lose. Now, Camelot, all right? I don't know how much time we got left, not very much, but watch this. Camelot was specifically the dynasty of the Celtics that was in Wales. This is where King Arthur and the Round Table and the Arthur Pendragon came out of. Now, we don't have time to go into it tonight, but that Pendragon thing you got to pay attention to. That dragon thing is all over. It's all over these families. All right? they trace their lineage back, once again, to the Tuatha Danann, tribe of the gods, the fairy people, or the fallen angels. This is Camelot. All right? Now, notice, this is the Knight of the Round Table. Notice what's in the middle, the golden chalice. This is King Arthur and all his guys around here. So you have Camelot. One of the guys on the thing is called Sir Lancelot. Now, watch. All right. Camelot means city of curved light, or a city of knowledge, or what we would call an age of enlightenment. Camelot, curved light. You live in a country right now that claims to be a city on a hill, right? A shining city on a hill. Now, where did we get that from? Where did we get that nickname? Now, the average Christian go, well, that's because we got the gospel, and we're telling everybody. Do you still believe that this was set up as a Christian nation? You are out of your mind if you think that. I am a Bible believer and love this country. But guys, if you study just a little bit about the history of the men that started this country, they wouldn't be allowed to be members of this church. Thomas Jefferson, who everybody praises, and man, I am thankful for our Constitution. I will die defending it, especially that second one. However, do you know what he thinks about Jesus? Study it sometime. Go look at what's known as the Thomas Jefferson Bible, where he took a penknife and started cutting stuff out of the Bible he didn't agree with. The guys that we hold up as great heroes, they were not great Christians. Now, they're great Americans, great patriots, and I'm down on that side of it. But guys, what they used to say about the deity of Christ, I'm not down. Now you're ripping on my Savior. I don't care if you're an American or not. That's where our walking together ends. Right? And by the way, you ever really want to find out who people are? Ask them what they think of Jesus. You ever notice when Jesus got done, he's at the campfire, and he sent his boys out. They came back. He said, how'd it go? Who do men say that I am? And then he turns around and he asks the most important question of ever, who do you say I am? Because everything about who you are can boil down to who is Jesus. And what do you think of him? I'm out of time. We're going to pick up Camelot next week, and we're going to talk about this city of light and what all it means. Well, excuse me, let me back up. We won't be here next week. Wedstrong is starting, and so I won't be here Wednesday. Justin won't be here, so we're just canceling service. Then we will pick up on the 15th and do this again. Then you're off for 2 straight weeks for Christmas, and then we'll pick it back up again at the 1st of January. So, any question?